Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. We had great competition tonight with the concert at St. John's, so thank you for your attendance. It is with pleasure to welcome you for this Benjamin Tonna lecture. I'm sure had Father Tonna been still alive, he would have really enjoyed a lecture on Teilhard de Chardin. As we all know, we are living in an age where the importance of the person has turned into individualism, a situation which Putnam has termed as bowling alone. We seem to be very lonely in a crowded world. We've moved from a sacred society to a secularized society, and now we are moving to a post-secular society which is looking for the sacred. And as Rana says, in this situation, to be a Christian, there is a necessity to be also a mystic. Teilhard de Chardin was a mystic who wanted to live his mysticism and to change the world through mysticism. And to talk to us on this topic tonight, I'm happy to present to you Professor Ursula King from the University of Bristol. She studied theology and philosophy in Germany, France, India, and England. She taught for many years in British University, especially Leeds and Bristol, and then in India, Norway, and the USA. She was awarded honorary degrees, doctorates from the University of Edinburgh, Oslo, and Dayton, Ohio. Her publications are extensive and too many to mention, and they deal with different subjects in comparative religious studies, on religion and gender, spirituality, and on Teilhard de Chardin. Relevant to today's lecture is her biography of Teilhard de Chardin, the Brompton Lectures, which he gave in Oxford in 1996, dealing with different aspects of Teilhard de Chardin's Christology, and an edition of Teilhard's essential writings on spirituality and a book on Christian mystics. Her more recent book, a copy of which you can browse in the lounge, is entitled The Search for Spirituality, and this was published last year. Ursula King is Professor Emerita of Theology and Religious Studies and a Senior Research Fellow at the Institute of Advanced Studies at the University of Bristol, and also a Professorial Research Fellow in the Department of the Study of Religions at the School of Oriental and African Studies of the University of London. Without much more ado, I present to you Professor King.
Well, thank you very much for this kind introduction, and my warmest thanks for the invitation to lecture to you here tonight. This is really a great honor and a wonderful opportunity for myself and my husband to come to Malta for the first time in our lives. And this is a very special experience, and we are really quite thrilled to see the beauties of your beautiful island and to learn so much about its history and to admire the great buildings and wonderful historical places, particularly in Valletta, which we have seen so far, and we hope to see more. So I'm very pleased to be with you here, and I really would like to share with you something of my many years' work and research on Teilhard de Chardin. It seems to me that Karl Rahner's words, which were just quoted, that the Christian of the future will be a mystic, or he or she will not exist at all, or will not exist at all, is such an intriguing remark that it invites a great deal of further reflection. And I would like to do this with the help of Teilhard de Chardin, who I consider, and I'm not the only one, to consider him one of the great Christian mystics of the 20th century. His experiential mysticism was rooted in his childhood, but it was greatly enlarged through his theological and scientific studies. And during almost 40 years of writing, between 1916 and 1955, he repeatedly reflected on the nature of mysticism, and he explained the powerful mystical vision he had, which he wanted to convey to others. Now, before I say more about this, I want to just start with some general reflections on spirituality and mysticism in the light of contemporary global interdependence. I think the contemporary mystic quest may be characterized in its most general terms as a widespread search for spirituality, in fact, as a global quest for meaning and fulfillment. And signs of this search, if we want to discern the signs of the times, I think signs of this deeply spiritual search are evident among people of many faiths and none in the secular world as well as in the religious world. Now, at the moment, we are faced with so many signs of the times in terms of the problems of poverty, of injustice, of violence, of ecological disasters, that uppermost in people's minds are often these many problems, particularly at the moment, the global financial crisis, which is linked to worldwide financial and material interdependence. Yet we are not only economically interdependent, but also deeply spiritually interdependent. This may be less obvious at first, but it was remarked upon by a number of social and critical religious thinkers. For example, Carl Gustav Jung famously said that modern man is in search of a soul. If you think of the immense global problems today, it seems to me that it is not only individuals that are in search of a soul, but that the whole world needs a new soul. We need a new vision, a new global order, a new mysticism of action, as Teilhard de Chardin called it. Our whole planet is marked by a deep spiritual crisis, evident in the breakdown of so many relationships, the loss of meaning and faith, and the disillusion with the surfeit of material goods and consumption. How to find a life of personal wholeness and deeper significance. How to create a world of greater justice and peace. These questions are asked by many people, and some answers can be found in a rightly understood and practiced spirituality. Now, this word spirituality has become such a buzzword. Already in 1960, the then Secretary General of the United Nations, the Burmese U Thant, said that the United Nations had done much to deal with the existing physical, mental, and moral needs of humankind, but that it now must also address humanity's spiritual needs. Few people spoke about that in the 1960s, but since then the word spirituality has undergone a real explosion. A similar rise in popularity can be observed in relation to the term mysticism, which is equally difficult to define. Many attempts have been made to say what it is, but human reason ultimately seems to be unable to penetrate the mystery at the heart of mysticism. Yet mystical experiences cannot be entirely opaque to reason either. Mystics of many ages and faiths in East and West bear supreme witness to the heights and depths of mystical experience. The mystics of the past speak with many voices. They use a wealth of metaphors and images and have left us a bewildering range of narratives about their inner life and vision. To most people, maybe to all of us who are not mystics themselves, mystical experience is only accessible through reading mystical literature. This is found worldwide, so that we can come across texts, mystical texts in Judaism, Christianity, Islam, in Hinduism, Buddhism, and in other faiths, but also in a wide range of secular literature and poetry. Mysticism has often been defined as a fundamentally unitive experience. In theistic religions, this has been understood as the deepest love, union, and communion with God, whereas in non-theistic religions, this mystical experience is often spoken about as a deeply contemplative approach to ultimate reality. If I look at Teilhard de Chardin, we have to ask ourselves, how did he understand mysticism and how relevant is his understanding for the contemporary mystic quest? Teilhard de Chardin, who lived between 1881 to 1955, was a great man of science, of faith and mysticism. It's impossible to give a detailed biography here. As Father Joe mentioned, I have written a biography of him, but here I want to just sketch a few outlines of his life. He was a French Jesuit who became a distinguished scientist of human origins and geology. His main scientific work was undertaken in China, where he spent over 20 years while always traveling between East and West. Born in the volcanic region of the Auvergne in central France, he belonged to an old aristocratic family which was distantly related to Voltaire, the great rationalist philosopher. Teilhard possessed an intellect, a sharp intellect, and achieved the highest academic and professional distinctions. But in many ways he had more in common with Pascal, another man of the Auvergne, who, like Teilhard himself, was a philosopher, scientist, and mystic. Teilhard de Chardin was a vivid writer who lived, breathed, and reflected on Christian spirituality and mysticism throughout an unusually rich and difficult life. Towards the end of his life, he acknowledged that his deeply mystical vision of God, the world, and human beings emerged to its full maturity through his two most formative experiences. And this is really very extraordinary. Namely, it emerged first during his life in the trenches of the First World War and his encounters from 1923 onwards with the people of Asia, especially the people of China. Most people think of Teilhard as a man of ideas, and what is more, of ideas that are rather difficult to understand. But he was not only a man of ideas, he was also a man of extraordinary passion and sensitivity who displayed a unity of heart and mind which is rare. His deepest desire was to see the essence of things, to find their heart, and to probe the mystery of life, its origin and goal. In the rhythm of life and its evolution at the center of the cosmos and the world, he saw a divine center, a living heart animated by the fiery energies of love and compassion. He intended above all to communicate this vision to others. He wanted to make other people see and feel as deeply about God and the world as he had experienced. Over the years, he made several attempts to describe this vision in successive essays, and I won't go into these, but many of them were started during the life in the trenches. So they were written during the First World War, and they are collected in a book called Writings in Time of War, which are not as well known as they should be. And in each of these essays, he reaffirms in very subtle manner his deeply spiritual outlook. Now, in the last essay, not the very last, but one of the last essays of his life, written in 1950, an essay that bears the title, The Heart of Matter, he developed a systematic account of his mystical vision. And this essay is prefaced by the motto,